Real apologies of Chris Matthews, the coming of the all-purpose, full-service Lou Dobbs anchor person, report the news, then analyze it, opinionate about it, wash it, dry it, fold it, whatever. The exciting return of Phil Donahue, the exciting departure of Bryant Gumbel, the exciting departure and return of Louis Rukeyser, the exciting prospect of a battle of the giants, Donahue, Chung, and O'Reilly, the exciting prospect of wall-to-wall, all-the-time coverage of the Robert Blake murder trial, and a la the Catholic Church, a lusting for youth scandal based on, to plagiarize Maureen Dowd and Bob Schieffer, a dynamic new theory that kids without money to buy things are a more desirable target television audience than grown-ups with money to buy things. Thus, the effort to replace Ted Koppel and the refreshing of Rukeyser off of his own program. To plagiarize somebody whose name I must have misplaced in my notes. God only knows, and maybe also Mickey Mouse knows, what's coming next in the brave new world of broadcast journalism. But for now, here tonight, it's only the world of Judy Woodruff, starring Wolf Blitzer, Andrea Mitchell, Leslie Stahl, Nancy Pelosi, Kay Bailey Hutchison, and somebody named Al. They are the roasters, and we will hear from them in a few minutes, but first, two toasts. Susan King is the Vice President of Public Affairs for the Carnegie Corporation of New York. She's probably most familiar to Washingtonians for her 20 years of broadcast journalism in this area and as the Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs for the Labor Department. She's known Judy a very long time and was a founding member with her of the International Women's Media Foundation. Susan.
Thank you very much, Jim. And I get to start. I'm not going to say she's perfect, but that's too boring. But I want to tell you a few things about Judy that the folks up there may not know. They're going to, of course, talk about her as the reporter's reporter. I know her also as the trustee of trustees, because she is one of the trustees at the Carnegie Corporation of New York. So we didn't buy a table because the Board of Trustees runs the joint and they won't let us give it to organizations as good as this. We have to give it to grantees. But I've also seen Judy as what I consider a woman's woman and a friend's friend, not only a reporter's reporter. In the mid-1980s, there were some communication women in Washington who wanted to get some journalists together to see whether they might decide that it would be a good idea to have a convention of women journalists around the world. And of course, we decided, why organize women in America when you can do it around the world? And we said, good idea. And we had 100 women from around the world come to the National Press Club. Judy was one of the leaders in that. She was there from the beginning. She was planning it. She picked who the people were. She came for the first day. It was incredible. The women from Nicaragua and France and all over Africa. It was powerful. And she slipped out all of a sudden. I thought, gee, why is she leaving when it's just getting good? Well, she had been the next day, child number 2. I mean, Judy is the kind of person who sort of does it till she can't do it anymore. She was important at that moment. And then at the end of the 80s, she said, why do this thing once? Let's set up an organization that will really organize women globally. And there was the birth of the International Women's Media Foundation. And it's not an exaggeration to say this organization is dependent on Judy for her judgment, her time, right? All her time, and her fundraising prowess. I think we're just about ready to make Judy the chair-in-chief of our Courage in Journalism Award, because every year in New York, when we recognize women from around the world who've done incredible things in journalism, Judy has been able to turn out an incredible crowd and put us in good stead for the next year. But we've also established an organization now in Africa, and it's no small part of Judy's judgment and her own personal fundraising, which has put this organization in Africa itself. So I don't want to just talk about her as Pollyanna or Goody Two-Shoes or Ms. Perfect. I'd like you all to raise your glass to this woman who is one hot mama of tough news broads worldwide. Thank you, Judy.
And to Susan Bunda, Senior Vice President of CNN US.
Well, I don't have that.
Is it on?
On.
Yeah.
I don't have that good of a story to say, but I would say to Judy, I don't often enough get to say these type of words in a public setting like this. You are an inspiration to so many of us. You are the consummate journalist, the colleague with a heart, and I will not tear up here. You are a leader from the anchor desk to the newsroom, and it matters. So I salute you.
And there are some people who would like to have been here to toast Judy but could not make it. And I have in writing what they have to say. First, from Bernard Shaw. It's a poem entitled Petals for Judy. You are the mother so near, so dear. You are the wife so near. You are the friend without fear. Heartache and disappointment we all must hear. Few possess your steel of perennial cheer. I know this to be your roast. May I break format with this rousing toast. You and I have scars thick and thin. Our meeting eyes know a true friend. And you've won is all you've won is all you've earned, even that withheld when you were spurned. You are grace. You are grace, you are nice, and the singe of the lie. You are courage, you are guts, your head ever high. We have shared a rose, or maybe two. All petals I throw say simply, respectful love to you, Bernie. This is from now messages from 3 former presidents of the United States. To Judy Woodruff, congratulations on receiving the American News Women's Club's Helen Thomas Award. Starting with my days as governor, then as president, and later as chairman of the Carter Center, I have been fortunate to share many interviews with you. As a consummate broadcast journalist, your professional ethics and high moral standards are both impressive and inspirational. The Helen Thomas Award is certainly a well-deserved recognition of your talents and career achievements. Rosalind and I are proud to be counted among your friends and colleagues. You have our warm best wishes for many more years of continued success and fulfillment. Sincerely, Jimmy Carter. Dear Judy, with your long and successful career in all segments of journalism, you are most deserving of the Helen Thomas Award for Excellence in Journalism, Outstanding Contribution to Public Service. Your superb record in the media definitely qualifies you to be one of Helen Thomas's very finest awardees of the American News Women's Club. For countless years, Helen Thomas has established a very high criteria in your profession, but with this recognition, you have joined her at the top. Congratulations on achieving this prestigious milestone in journalism. Betty joins me with our highest compliments, Jerry Ford. Dear Judy, I'm delighted to congratulate you as you are honored and in some cases dishonored by your family, friend, he means the roast thing, see, by your family, friends, colleagues, and admirers at the 10th Annual Award and Benefit Dinner of the American News Women's Club. While I'd like to give you as hard a time on this occasion as you gave me during the presidential debates, etc., you have simply too much earned this honor and done too much good. In your career and in your life, you have exemplified the qualities that make an outstanding journalist and an inspiring human being: determination, insightfulness, fairness, courage, and compassion. As you receive this year's Helen Thomas Award for Excellence in Journalism, you can take great pride both in your remarkable record of accomplishment and in the deepest respect and affection of your viewers and colleagues. To have so many friends after covering politics for all these years, you must be doing something right. Hillary joins me in extending best wishes for a memorable and not too painful award dinner and much continued success. Sincerely, Bill Clinton. And now, on with the roast part of the show. Be forewarned, every aspect of it is old-fashioned, likely to appeal to only a 60-plus non-desirable target audience. There are 6 talking heads plus Judy. All of them, except Judy, of course, are over 40 years of age and have a few dollars in their pocket. And each will be introduced and will speak the old-fashioned way, one at a time. Wolf Blitzer anchors an astonishing 8 to 11 hours of news programming each week, including Wolf Blitzer Reports each weekday and Late Edition with Wolf Blitzer for 3 hours on Sunday. He was just recently in Jerusalem for special programming. He joined CNN in 1990 and 1993. Judy became his colleague. Certainly Wolf has seen Judy up close and in action, on and off camera. Wolf.
Thank you very much, Jim, for that accurate introduction. And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for inviting me here. Thanks to the American News Women's Club. Did I say that right? Yes. Okay. Jim Lehrer is a journalist and a role model. I remember when he used to invite me on his show. He hasn't invited me on his show in a long time. I want to thank all of my colleagues, everybody here on the dais. Al Hunt, of course, Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, Andrea Mitchell. She was just in the Middle East as well. Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, Leslie Stahl. Congratulations, of course, to Judy for receiving this award. I've known Judy now for many, many years, long before she went to work for CNN, but not nearly enough. I would have liked to have known her many years earlier when she was growing up, for example, in Augusta, Georgia. Many of you probably don't know that she won the Junior Miss Pageant Award there. That's a beauty contest. She's still very beautiful, right? This confirms, of course, what all of us who know and love Judy all of these years can say with truth, that she's not only intelligent, hardworking, passionate in her journalism, but also just a little bit sexy. And Judy, all of us who watch you, we love the leather jackets. Perhaps the high point of Judy's career, distinguished career over many years, happened only a few weeks ago when she appeared on Comedy Central's The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. I don't know if, did any of you saw? It's probably past your bedtimes, 11 o'clock at night. I watched that show because I have a 20-year-old daughter, so I have to be up to speed on all the latest developments. And most of her friends get their political news from that show. I'm not making this up. Judy was on that show, and she appeared right after they did an extended taped excerpt, a taped report on pornography. Is that right, Judy? Jon Stewart apologized profusely, and all of us who know Judy, we think she's very prim and proper, and she probably wouldn't have been able to handle it. She handled it well, and I said to my wife after watching it, I said, people don't realize that Judy covered Bill Clinton's impeachment process. She understands these kinds of things. That was the high point of Judy's journalistic career. Judy got started in journalism, as many of you know, sort of indirectly, not really, it wasn't really journalism, it was a job at an ABC affiliate, a local TV station in Atlanta, and she was a secretary. It's not really journalism, close to journalism though. When she applied for the job, the news director, she writes about this herself, says, "How could I turn somebody down with legs like yours?" That's what news directors used to say to young women who used to come in to apply for jobs. That was an ABC News affiliate, by the way. Judy was also one of the early blondes in television. She's still a blonde, look at that. There's no shortage of blondes nowadays in television, but we shouldn't hold Judy's beautiful blonde hair against her. For one thing, believe it or not, I used to be a blonde myself. But Judy's become a role model for many young women who want to pursue careers in journalism. I know this from scientific research that I've done over the years with young women, including my own 20-year-old daughter. Yeah, my 20-year-old daughter and her friends. My own daughter recently went to see that. I'm explaining. My daughter recently went to see the movie Legally Blonde. Have you seen that movie? Legally Blonde? Probably a younger demographic than this audience. It's about a very beautiful, attractive blonde college student who wants to go to Harvard Law School. The actress is Reese Witherspoon. Very beautiful, gorgeous blonde. My daughter went to see that movie, and she was inspired by it. She told me, she said, "Dad, I really loved that movie." I said, "You mean to say you want to go to Harvard Law School?" And she said, "No, I want to be a blonde." So Judy, like Reese Witherspoon, you're inspiring a whole new generation of young women who want to become blondes. Did you notice, by the way, yesterday Inside Politics, Judy's daily program, 4 p.m. Eastern every day, Monday through Friday? She was outside in front of the Washington Hilton Hotel. It was a windy day, and her beautiful blonde hair was sort of flowing in all sorts of different directions. I said to myself, "Judy, next time think about this, hairspray." Judy worked her way up the journalistic ladder relatively quickly, I must say. She went from that secretarial job in Atlanta to becoming the weekend weather girl at that same TV station while continuing her secretarial responsibilities. And then eventually, of course, she became a real television reporter. Over the years, she's scored many journalistic coups, but I must say her greatest journalistic coup occurred in 1977. Shortly after she moved to Washington, that's when she once again met a very dashing young reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Was he blonde too in those days? 3 months after she came back to Washington, she and Al Hunt had their first official date. They hit it off. We all know the end result. All these many, many years later, they're still married, which is no easy feat here in Washington, given, of course, the extraordinary pressures of 2 journalistic careers at the same time. You can applaud. Go ahead. I think it's pretty impressive that they have been able to manage not only their journalistic careers, but their family, a wonderful, loving family, and we're all very, very proud of both of them, of course, and all of their kids as well. Judy's reputation, and I speak now as someone who is representing CNN here, her reputation at CNN, of course, is outstanding. She's extremely well organized, very demanding, tolerant of mistakes, but she's, everyone who's ever worked with Judy at CNN, I'm sure earlier when she worked for the McNeil-Lehrer report, when she worked at whatever that was called, it's gone through several changes, when she worked at other networks over the years, everyone, I think, will agree that she has always been and still is very much a pleasure to work with. She is a steady pro. All of us who know that when the story gets hot, Judy is excellent and calming and wonderful in that anchor chair. And if you watched our coverage after September 11th, I'm sure all of you will agree with me as well. She is not only a great journalist, a great mother, a great person, and a great friend, she's also extremely generous with all of her time. I don't know where she gets the time to do what she does do, but she works actively for many worthwhile causes, including this one, of course, the Spina Bifida Association of America, a cause all of us should support. To sum up, and I think I speak for everyone at CNN, from Walter Isaacson, who unfortunately our chairman, who couldn't be here today, but we do have many of our top executives who come in from Atlanta. Catherine Cross, our Washington bureau chief, is here, of course, as well. She's sure looked to Judy over these years as a role model, as so many others, all of us have done. To sum up, I think it's fair to say Judy Woodruff is not only smart and beautiful and nice. In fact, in the dictionary, the word nice, it's got her picture right next to it. I think we can all say, in the words of her ancestors, going way back earlier than Augusta, Georgia, I think we can all agree, Judy Woodruff is a mensch. Thank you very much.
That was terrific, Wolf, and you hang by the phone. If we ever decide to do a segment on blondes, we'll give you a call. Andrea Mitchell's beat is the world. As NBC's chief foreign affairs correspondent, her assignments have covered the political spectrum, including 2 separate stints at the White House. She also is, as Wolf just said, she's just back from the Middle East, where she was with Secretary of State Powell. During her first White House years, Andrea worked with another young reporter named Woodruff, whose daughter later served as flower girl when Andrea married some economic person. Andrea.
Thank you, Jim. It's great to be with all of you again. Here, it was only a few years ago that I was roasted. I'm just beginning to heal from the wounds. Helen Thomas, it's wonderful to be here celebrating an award named after you because you are the dean of us all. So I'm happy again. And it's great to see Leslie Stahl back here. I remember when Ronald Reagan used to need special coaching and a seating chart before every news conference so that he did not confuse what he called the network blondes, Judy and Leslie. Of course, that's before I was a blonde. True. But tonight we've come together to toast and roast our friend Judy Woodruff. And what can I say about Judy Woodruff that she hasn't already said about herself? You all probably think of Judy as a class act, hardworking, collegial, self-effacing, even selfless. Well, you're wrong. I'm here to tell you about the real Judy Woodruff. For years, her co-anchors and her colleagues have been covering up for her. You think that Judy Woodruff does her homework, cares about her profession, answers every call from charities, from friends, from colleagues. Au contraire. And if you think I'm making this all up, I'll give you a small hint. Who was the chief correspondent for the McNeil-Lehrer report, who drove Robin McNeil into early retirement at the very peak of his career? Who was the correspondent who drove Chris Wallace out of NBC? And Karen Hughes back to Texas? Who made Bernie Shaw cower under Tate Wagon? Believe me, it was not Saddam Hussein. Who gets into a catfight every night with Candy Crowley over Skip, the CNN makeup man? Who is the cable news anchor who demands to stay in the studio like Wolf Blitzer instead of roughing it by anchoring outside without a teleprompter, without a studio light, outside in front of any nondescript building that allegedly has a news conference or a conference going on inside, squinting at the sun with her hair blowing in her face? Who was that NBC correspondent on the Carter plane who got the poor candidate to admit that life isn't fair? And did you ever ask yourself, just whom did Carter really lust after in his heart? Come to think of it, how did Judy bag Al Hunt while playing shortstop in Plains? And why do you think Al is prematurely gray? In fact, I'm told on reliable authority that Barbara Bush was a brunette until Judy interviewed her at the Republican convention in 1992. This is a woman who only pretends to be interested in the balance of payments. What does she really thrive on? Who do you think pushed CNN to devote all of that airtime after she joined CNN in 1993 to cover O.J. and Monica and John Bonet and Gary Condon? Just the other night, I heard her threatening to go mano a mano with Geraldo for that first jailhouse interview with Robert Blake. And And at the very moment when CNN was trying to improve its coverage of foreign policy and international finance by hiring serious journalists like Andrea Thompson, Judy Woodruff wanted to do nothing but features on teen sex. It was enough to drive Ted Turner to Prozac and Jane Fonda to God. As Wolf already pointed out, did you see Judy on Jon Stewart's show the other night in full leather? Who does she think she is, Paula Zahn? If you think I am making this up, I am. Roasting Judy Woodruff is like roasting Mother Teresa. Simply put, Judy is the very best journalist and one of the finest persons I've ever known. She's a loving mother and wife. She's an enduring and supportive friend, and believe me, I know. By example, she teaches us all that it is possible. It's possible to uphold the very highest standards of excellence in journalism. It becomes harder and harder every day, no matter how fierce the competition or how tough the pressure. I can't think of anyone in our profession so universally loved and respected, except perhaps Jim Lehrer. But Judy, the truth is, as wonderful as you are for your millions of viewers, you are even more special to those of us who know you, who are fortunate enough to know you behind the camera. So it has been tough figuring out how to roast you tonight. I find it much more natural to toast you. So here's to my friend Judy, one of a kind, the very best in the business, the best friend I've ever known. Thank you.
Really sweet and totally unnecessary. I loved it. It was funny.
Thank you, Andrea. The interview that caused Barbara Bush to have a problem with Judy did while she was working with us. And I happened to, after that interview, I don't know, it was 12 years later, run into Mrs. Bush. And she said, "Is she still with you?" And I said, "Who do you mean, Mrs. Bush?" She's still annoyed with you, Judy. Speaking of blondes, Leslie Stahl, CBS News correspondent, co-editor of 60 Minutes, has known Judy, as we know, since they covered the White House together during the Carter and Reagan administrations. In her book, Judy Woodruff at the White House, Judy notes that at the time, there were 4 male reporters to every female, and she counts, as Wolf said, Andrea said, President Reagan's press secretary acknowledged that President Reagan couldn't always tell, as he called them, the 2 blondes apart. Leslie?
Thank you, Jim. Andrea, that was hilarious. I want to sit down now. Hi, Helen. Well, it's absolutely true about Reagan. In fact, at the news conferences, as you'll remember, Reagan didn't want to let on that he didn't know us apart. So he would call dear and then dear, just to make sure. And that's true. Judy and I were competitors at the White House for years, Judy at NBC, I at CBS. And yet, despite the cutthroat nature of the beat, we became friends. But we almost had to, because those were the days when there weren't any other girls around. Which reminds me of something that Tom Lehrer once said, and that is, when he was younger, there were certain 4-letter words that you couldn't say to a girl. Now that you can say them, you can't say girl. Anyway, Judy was already at the White House as chief NBC correspondent when I came on board. We covered everything together, from Carter's telling the Mexicans that they had given him Montezuma's revenge, to Reagan's toasting Bolivia the minute he got to Brazil, to his calling Samuel Doe of Liberia Chairman Mo. By then with Reagan, it was a question of age. He just couldn't remember names, including Judy's and mine. And by the way, Andrea, he once called me Andrea, which is true. This is true. But here is the dark truth. Judy herself is getting up there. She has been around so long that she actually remembers when Andrea was a brunette. Judy is deeply into that age group where she is too young to be a legend, but too old for CNN to do a promo that calls her sexy.
Ouch.
Remember when we used to make fun of Ted Koppel's hair? Now he has more hair than you or I do. Everybody except, well, I guess everybody except you and me. Everybody's been jumping networks. Connie Chung to CNN, Geraldo to Fox, Paula Zahn to CNN. All that jumping around has gotten so dangerous. People are getting hurt. Earlier this year, there was a 4-anchor pileup on the Avenue of the Americas. I think it was Greta Van Susteren who ended up on the bottom, which explains a lot, wouldn't you think? Since I left Washington to join 60 Minutes, and that was 11 years ago, and I'm going to tell you this with all modesty, I have become one of the world's leading experts on aging, which of course you'd become too if you worked with guys that old. Come on. Now, everyone always says that the reason 60 Minutes has been able to maintain our ratings for lo these many years is because of our protected time slot at 7 o'clock on Sunday nights. But the real reason I'm here to tell you and explain it to you that we are on so early is because Mike has trouble staying up later than 7 o'clock. He has been in the business so long. When he first started, his scripts were transcribed by monks. He used to come running into the newsroom, hollering, "Stop the chisels, stop the chisels. I'm gonna break this town wide open." Well, there is a generation gap. And stop the chisels, Judy. You and I are on the same side as Mike. And as far as our bosses are concerned, it's the wrong side. Of course, there has always been a generation gap. I suppose it was worse during the Vietnam War when Lyndon Johnson and then Nixon were in the White House. And it was around then that Fred Friendly stepped down as the president of CBS News and joined the faculty at the Columbia School of Journalism. And on his very first day there, Judy Woodruff showed up in his class wearing a T-shirt that said, "Make love, not war." Fred told her that is not an appropriate shirt to wear in class, to which Judy responded, "Mr. Friendly, you are so old-fashioned, you probably think that making love is making out." Well, it isn't. Well, Friendly had lunch that day with Walter Lippmann, and he told him about Woodruff criticizing him for thinking that making love was making out, to which Lippmann responded, "What the hell is making out?" Now, Friendly thought that that pretty much summed up the generation gap. So the next day, he told his class what Lippmann had said. "What the hell is making out?" To which Judy said, "Who the hell is Walter Lippmann?" You laughed. Thank you. I must be totally nuts to stand up here in front of an audience like this in Washington and try to be funny. Only love of Judy Woodruff would get me up here. And as I told Betty when she asked me to do this, I don't know where Betty is, but she will vouch for this. I told her that I hate roasting. It's so hard. First of all, most of the stories you tell, you make up, which is a hell of a thing for a reporter, and most of the jokes you steal. True, fellow roasters? True? You know, as I look up and down the table of roasters, I come to realize that we were chosen tonight on the basis of journalism, cronyism, nepotism, and in my case, masochism. Now, getting back to Judy, I suggested earlier that she isn't a legend, but that's not true. Since the mid-'70s, she has been one of the most respected, one of the most prodigious, one of the most celebrated political journalists. She's unflappable, she's careful, and she has gotten more scoops than Haagen-Dazs, including her great coup. When was it? Just last fall, Judy? It was Judy Woodruff who found out about the Al Gore, Bill Clinton, rapprochement hunting trip and followed them to Arkansas with a hidden camera. She was there when Al and Bill, all done up in their camouflage fatigues, their hunting rifles poised, were crouched down in the woods. She heard, as they did, a rustling in the bushes. She saw, as they did, the beautiful, sexy girl emerge into the clearing. "Well, hello, y'all," said the sexy girl. "What you boys out here doing?" Bill Clinton stood up, dazzling as always, handsome. He sucked it in, and he said to her, "We're out here looking for wild game." And the girl said, "I'm wild, and I'm game." And Al Gore shot her. Without flinching, Judy grabs the tape from her cameraman, dashes back to the edit room at CNN. As she jams the cassette into the Avid, she thinks, "I'm going to break this town wide open," and hits play. The cameraman shot only 20 minutes of Bill Clinton, not one frame of Al Gore. That's not funny, but think about it. Roasting Miss Woodruff was no easy assignment. Why didn't you guys pick Al Hunt? Something to get your teeth into. I actually did research to do this. I went back into old CBS lore, old joke books, as you can probably tell. I even delved into Judy's childhood and found out that when she was about 7, she went walking through the woods carrying a basket of food when the wolf appeared. "Are you carrying that basket to your grandmother's?" he asked. "Why, yes, I am," said Judy. So the wolf asked her where her grandmother lived, and Judy told him, and he disappeared into the woods. When Judy opened the door of her grandmother's house, she saw that there was someone in bed with a nightcap and a nightgown on. She moved closer and saw that it was not her grandmother at all, but the wolf. So Judy took out an automatic that was in her basket and blew the wolf's head off, proving that it's not as easy to fool a little girl as it used to be. And don't you all forget it. Nobody pulls the wool over Judy's eyes. As a reporter, smart, tenacious, honest. As a friend, funny. And as Wolf said, menschy. And she is a great girl. And like all of you, I love her very much. Thank you.
That's a really good accent you put on there, Leslie. I have a quick Judy age story to tell you. She knows what the story is. Washingtonian Magazine does these little things, you know, on the hot people in the media. Name, you know, lists them and all of that. Well, one year when she was working with us, they got her age wrong. And they made her 10 years older than she really was. And it was a real dilemma for her. And I picked up on it, of course, immediately. And I finally said, now, Judy, I think I understand what your problem is. You cannot write a letter to the editor because in order to correct it, you have to tell them exactly how old you are. So, and she said, you're right. But she said from then on, wherever she went, she knew people thought she was 62 years old, and that was 20 years ago. I mean, I mean, that's kind of like that. I'm doing my best. Never mind. But they did get her, anyhow, forget it. Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi recently made history when she became the first female whip in the U.S. House of Representatives, the highest-ranking female to serve in that body. She's a member of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor, Health, and Human Services, where she has focused on issues of key importance to the nation's families, including education. 5 children call her mother, and 5 more call her grandmother, so when she speaks to family concerns, she knows the territory. Nancy.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you for talking about my grandchildren, because my children always say they want to see how long it is in any given speech on the floor or any place before I bring up my grandchildren, now that we have that out of the way. It is only the high regard that I have for Judy Woodruff and for the American News Women's Club, and indeed for Helen Thomas, that I would throw caution to the wind and stand up here before all of you. Ask any politician, is this not right, Senator Hutchinson? We'd rather speak to a crowd of 50,000 demonstrators or face an editorial board, no matter how hostile, than come before all of you whose profession it is to communicate and to try to be funny. And when they ask us to roast Judy Woodruff, the loveliest, most gracious person in the business, well, you said Mother Teresa. I would say, as I said on another occasion about someone else, that it was like roasting Bambi, only this time I mean it. So, Judy Woodruff is a respected household name, a characterization that every politician strives for and hardly ever achieves. So when I was coming here tonight, I thought, what could I possibly say? First of all, I thought, well, I'll be auditioning to be part of the spina bifida roast in the fall, so I have to do okay, so I need your cooperation on that. And maybe I could get some advice from all these journalists here about how to become a respected household word. For a politician, again, it's a tough thing. When I was sworn in as a whip, though, all of a sudden I got all of this press attention. The top media stars in the country were calling me. Things were looking up, but they were calling me to see if I could put them in touch with my daughter Alexandra, who had just made a movie, Journeys with George, about her being on the campaign trail with George Bush. So that wasn't too good. It only gets worse. Following that, Judy, I was in New York, and I gave this speech to a women's group there. Following the speech, I had to go to another engagement. I didn't have much time. All these press were pulling me one way or another. Come and be interviewed for me. One young woman said to me, I'm with Inside Politics. So I said, okay, I'll go there. We need to have you. You're a historic figure. We have to have you. So she pulls me all over to the side, and she says, Judy, she says to me, pulls me over to the camera. The interviewer is very gracious. She says, oh, I'm so happy that you're here. And first thing I want to ask you is, who are you? And it's like, oh my goodness, this is not good. This is not good, and you are, and you are. So on the heels of that, another reporter said to me, and again, this is why I need your advice, all of you. Another reporter said to me, I know who you are. I want to interview you. You're Barbara Boxer. And I said, no, I'm not Barbara Boxer. Oh, yes, you are. I know who you are. So I said, no, I'm Nancy Pelosi. And she said, are you sure? Well, pondering that metaphysical challenge, I thought back to when Barbara Boxer first ran for office. Senator Hutchinson, you might be interested to know your colleague, when she first ran, she was working for someone named John Burton, who was a congressman at the time. And when she told him she was running for office, he said, oh, that's just great. That's just great. But remember, it's going to be different now. You're going to have to make the votes. You're going to have to take the tough decisions. But you have to do what is right, because remember one thing. The next morning, you have to look at yourself in the mirror when you're shaving. It's taking a lot of work for us women in politics to point out that there are some differences and some distinctions. You know, Inside Politics is the hot show. Was it 4 to 5 every day, Monday through Friday, Wolf? And of course, the hot political story this week was from France. Imagine, voters gave a victory to a candidate who was shunned by everyone, by the leaders of all the opposition parties, and disliked even by those in his own party. Interesting enough, right after I heard about this on Inside Politics, I was driving down the street and I saw Jim Traficant signing up for going into the Alliance Française. I guess he was trying to learn how to say "beam me up" in French. And speaking of him, and I know he's been a subject on Inside Politics, Judy, how about him? He certainly caused a commotion when he insisted on being his own defense attorney. And now, can you imagine, now he wants to appeal the case on the basis of inadequate and incompetent representation. I think the moment of the night for me was to see Wolf Blitzer give Judy Woodruff beauty advice. Hairspray. That was just too much for me, this beautiful, elegant woman, this handsome guy, giving her advice about her hair. You know, Wolf was for 30 years he covered the Middle East crisis. Go all the way back 30 years ago. Remember then they were saying there was strife in the Middle East? And here we are 30 years later, and Wolf's still covering the territory. You ever think you might be part of the problem, Wolf? Anyway, when he was coming back from doing just the foreign policy and the Middle East stuff, Andrea, you know how much he's been on that trail. You've seen him there. When he was coming back to do some of the congressional stuff here, Judy had to help him out a little bit. She said, drilling the Anwar has nothing to do with the former president of Egypt. You caught on to it, didn't you, Wolf? It's an Inside Politics joke. Leslie talked about people jumping networks. But here we are tonight to honor Judy Woodruff, who has quite an impressive past and career. She has worked for CNN, as she does now, PBS, NBC, and CBS. Judy, you have always been fair, informative, objective, and thorough in all of your reporting. Of course, that eliminates you from ever working for Fox News. Leslie talked about four-letter words, and my friend Brendan Daly, my communications director, is here with his family, and his aunt, I thought sister or cousin, is the chair of the dinner tonight, reminded me of how loyal Judy is to her alma mater, Duke, and to the Duke Blue Devils. When I think of Duke, I think of my good friend Terry Sanford, who was president of Duke before becoming a senator. While he was at Duke, Brendan was telling me, the students got overly excited at a referee's call, and Uncle Terry, as he was called, sent them a letter asking them to tone it down. They listened, and at the next game, instead of shouting four-letter words at the referees, they chanted, "We beg to differ." That is the tradition that Judy comes from. No matter what the fire there is under there, ever gracious in the spirit of the Blue Devils. Judy, you know, when you were covering the UN Conference of Women in Beijing in 1995, you did such a great job. The human rights issue in China is an issue near and dear to my heart. But Judy, even I have to say, you were asking too much when you said, "Mr. Deng Xiaoping, tear down this wall." As you all know, Judy's been covering politics and national affairs for a long time, but she got her start in the political debate side of things when she moderated the 1988 vice presidential debate between Lloyd Bentsen and Dan Quayle. You all remember the great moment in politics, the classic Bentsen stinging line, "You're no Jack Kennedy," to Dan Quayle. Well, Dan Quayle sort of had the last laugh. He became the vice president of the United States. A few years later, after the following defeat, when he was running for president himself, you remember this, Judy, there was a crowded field, and Jack Kemp was in the field, and Jack Kemp was one of the first to exit. And when he did, he said he was leaving the presidential race because he wanted to spend more time with his family. A little while later into the campaign, Dan Quayle saw the handwriting on the wall and realized that he had to leave, and he was trying to find a gracious way to do it, and he thought he would follow Jack Kemp's lead in a graceful way. So he said that he was leaving the campaign to spend more time with Jack Kemp's family. Speaking of spending more time with the family, today Judy interviewed Karen Hughes this afternoon, as has been previously mentioned on Inside Politics, about Karen's decision to return to Texas to be closer to her family. Karen knew she'd been at the White House too long when she told her son that she could neither confirm or deny that dinner would be ready at 6 p.m. And when she told her husband on Valentine's Day that a high-level White House official loved him very much. You know, Judy, it's impossible to roast you. Who can roast this gracious, lovely lady, has been said over and over. We can make jokes about the profession that she is in and how it lends itself to humor. But if there is any such thing as aristocracy in the media business, and that must be a contradiction in terms, because it certainly is about freedom and not about aristocracy, but a meritocracy, Judy is certainly at the top of all of that. And I know Al is going to come up here. I can't even imagine how he is going to roast Judy. I almost don't want to be around for it. Because, you know, they say part of the art form of these roasts is that they make strange bedfellows. All kinds of people appear to roast someone. But I think, Al, that you better err on the side of toast, because you don't want to have any, we don't want to have any strained bedfellows around here tonight. So I want to join Andre and the others in offering a toast to Judy for being a role model to so many young women in America who want to succeed in whatever profession they choose, especially those who want to succeed in the profession that is most fundamental to our democracy, the freedom of the press. Thank you, Judy, for being all that you are, and thank you for allowing me to be part of it.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Judy, I wrote that down, Inside Politics 4 to 5. I wondered what had happened to you. We have a very long and boring inside joke between the two of us. Every time I've seen her since she left our program, I always say, well, did you, what is the, tell me again, you know, the cable thing, you know, the shopping channel and all of that, but now I know what it is. Inside Politics 4 to 5, and I will watch it. Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison is the first woman senator from the great state of Texas, and she was elected for a second term with the largest number of votes in Texas history, 4 million. Like Judy and Nancy, she has another life beyond career, a husband and children, and she's a lady surprisingly similar to Judy in other ways as well. The senator may have some clues on how such a woman does it all, or seems to. Kay?
Thank you, Jim. Well, thank all of you. I am so pleased to be here tonight. Judy and I really do have a lot in common. We're both from the South. We're both unnatural blondes. And we're both portrayed as having big hair. Now, I think this is an unfair stereotype. I asked you to look at the front of the program. When I first saw it, I thought it was Al Hunt. You may know that early in my career, I too was a newswoman. For me, though, it was not by choice. After I graduated from the University of Texas Law School in 1967, I knocked on every law firm door in the city of Houston, but none hired female attorneys. So I did land a job, but not as a lawyer. I was a television news reporter making $125 a week. Judy graduated with a journalism degree from Duke a couple of years later, landing the job as news secretary for $90 a week. This is the last time I came out ahead of Judy. Yes, Judy moved right up that newsletter a lot more quickly than I did. When her home state's governor, Jimmy Carter, became president, Judy got to move to Washington, D.C. Now there are two people who can thank Jimmy Carter for their careers, Judy Woodruff and Ronald Reagan. Since most of our modern presidents have been Southern, you'd think everyone would understand Southerners by now. That every American would know you don't put sugar on your grits. But this is not the case. In the 1970s, Judy had the privilege of being the resident expert on all things Georgia. When President Carter started serving barbecue at state dinners at the White House, Judy had a lot of explaining to do. Since I arrived in Washington, I have found myself in a similar position, having to explain Texans to my colleagues. So in an effort to help you judge who is really close to the president, I want to share a few tips about how you can spot a fake Texan. If you go into any place and you hear someone say, "Honey, did you mail that donation to Greenpeace?" They're not from Texas. Now, in my home state, a surefire conversation starter is to ask a person about their favorite college football team. If they say they don't have a favorite college football team, they didn't grow up in the Lone Star State. Any self-respecting, God-revering Texan not only has a favorite college football team, they can quote the starting lineup, they can sing the school song, and they know that a Hail Mary pass has nothing to do with missing church on Sunday. And for all of you in the audience that I see regularly prowling around Crawford, I have some advice. If you happen to run in a ditch off the dirt road, don't panic. Very shortly, 3 men in the cab of a 4-wheel drive pickup truck with a tow chain will be along. They will also have a 6-pack of beer. Do not try to help them. Stay out of the way. This is what they live for. Of course, there are many similarities between Judy's home state and mine. If you are either from Georgia or Texas, you know someone who has used a high school football schedule to plan their daughter's wedding. You also know that on the opening day of dove season, it is an official state holiday. Do not plan to go to the bank, to the post office, or to the county courthouse. Everyone there will be busy stocking their pickups with ammunition and cold beer. Now, in Texas, cold beer is one word, as is fixin' to. If you're in a coffee shop and someone orders wheat toast, they're from Ohio. If they order granola and yogurt, leave immediately. Trouble is about to happen. Judy, you're a trailblazer for women in the news business. And I have to tell you, I'm having second thoughts. Katie Couric's latest contract was $16 million a year. $16 million. I was thinking, do I still have what it takes to be on national TV? I'm perky. I laugh all the time. But I'm not a Democrat. Well, I want to say the reason that I admire you and Al so much is I know what your schedules are, and I know the family commitments that you have, and yet you never, ever fail to help a charity or make life better for other people. and I know that everyone here tonight has said that about you. I don't know how you do it, but I admire you very much. Thank you.
Well, this is encouraging.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to do is not an obscene gesture, okay? Okay? Hook 'em horn, see?
They get it. That's real.
Our last roaster has known the honoree for several years. They go way back. They first met using adjoining phone booths in Steubenville, Ohio, while covering Jimmy Carter's presidential campaign. A few weeks later, they met again, as has been noted, in Plains, Georgia, playing in a softball game against Carter campaign staffers. He is now executive Washington editor for the Wall Street Journal and Dow Jones. He writes a weekly editorial page column, Politics and People, and is seen weekly on CNN's The Capitol Gang and Novak, Hunt, and Shields. I'll give you Al Hunt Woodruff.
Jim, thank you. You have just been terrific tonight. You really are so much more interesting than Chris Matthews suggested. I really am surprised. Helen, you're our hero for all of us. If the others were reluctant to be up here tonight, you can imagine my feelings, and it was only Betty Dukert's charming persistence that persuaded me to say yes. But I thought it very important to consult someone who was especially sensitive. So I asked Bob Novak for advice. And Bob said, a roast? He said, you know, a roast, you can really be very witty, sharp, funny. He said, Shields could do that, but not you. And he said, you also can use a roast to say something interesting and insightful. He said, O'Byrne and Carlson could do that, but not you. And ever the economic determinist, Novak said, there's even a bigger problem. I said, what's that, Bob? And he said, she makes a lot more money than you do. If you bomb, it could be financially perilous. So that being the case, I thought that I needed to go outside, and so I have consulted for these purposes tonight some outside experts.
Everybody always tells me how nice my mom is and how much charm she has, but there is more that you do not know about her. At home, she yells and screams at us about the littlest things, like about homework, or she'll say, Lauren, you can't wear that. Sometimes she even says bad words I'm not allowed to say, and I won't even be a teenager for another week.
What is it that you do not know about Judy Woodruff? You know, she is very good on television. You know that everybody likes her, and for her age, she is still beautiful. But there is one thing you do not know about her. She has smelly feet. We gave her foot powder. We give her foot powder for Christmas every year. Mom, I hope this year you will use it.
People always tell me my mom is smart. She is. She knows who the agricultural secretary is, who the governor of Georgia is, and who the president of Kazakhstan is. But let me tell you what she does not know. She thinks the Wu-Tang Clan is a Chinese meal. She has no idea which of the 3 Godfather movies Robert De Niro played in. And when our family goes to the Wizards games, she wants to know who is pitching.
Even more than yells and punishments, my mom gives me a lot more hugs and clothes. I love you, Mom.
To be serious, Mom, you have been with me when it really mattered. I love you, Mom.
But whatever her small deficiencies, there is one incredible quality about my mom. For 22 years, she has put up with my dad. I love you, Mom.
Several weeks ago, we went to a birthday party for some friends. It happened to be the same night of our wedding anniversary, and unexpectedly I was asked to stand up and give a toast, and I proved that Bob Novak was absolutely right because I bombed. And as I sat down, Sally Quinn yelled at me, "You didn't even say you loved her." I want to join my 3 children, Jeffrey and Benjamin and Lauren. I love you, sweetheart.
Thank you, roasters one and all. Before we let Judy speak for herself, I want to tell you how it truly was. Clearly a PBS operation. Hey, Crystal, where are you? Oh, here we go. Once upon a time, not so long ago, in a land far away, Oklahoma, was born a remarkable baby girl. Early on, she acquired a taste for the wide, wide world, moving with her military family. 7 schools in 6 years, finally Duke University. Here she got a journalism and political science degree and became a star student, if not player. Goal is television.
Robert says he won't have any...
Being a girl, though, she knew she couldn't be a TV anchor. She got her foot into TV land in Atlanta as a new secretary. But the demand for women on air was escalating, and soon the boss offered her a chance to be, what else? The weather girl. Well, it was exposure. Quickly came an offer from a bigger Atlanta station, and soon a chance to report on the state legislature and their new governor, Jimmy Who, and such important contacts.
I think the first time I saw these seeds of greatness was when I watched her cover in the same day a knife fight at a local juke joint, a chicken truck that turned over on the downtown connector, and the entire proceedings of the Georgia legislature.
Undaunted, she applied to all 3 networks in New York.
Hello, I'm Judy Woodruff. I'm 28 years old, and I've been a reporter for WAGA-TV in Atlanta for the past 5 years.
She found a little encouragement from NBC, where she was told to get more air experience. Back to Atlanta, but soon came a call from NBC saying a job had opened in their Atlanta bureau, and it was hers. When the Who began to disappear from Jimmy's name, she was NBC's in-house expert on the governor, although periodically replaced on air during the campaign by bigger network names. But she stuck it out. And when it was all over, NBC added Judy Woodruff to its White House staff.
I guess the scene that will stay with me longest is that day when it all became real, and there stood Judy Scarlett, as we used to call her, with that Georgia soil clenched in her fist, tears streaming down her face, staring off into the glow of a Georgia sunset, saying, "As God is my witness, I'll never cover chicken trucks again."
In those early White House years, there was excitement and much to learn. Judy found more than competition from CBS's Leslie Stahl.
Cat fight. 2 women, CBS, NBC, had to be a cat fight.
But we were friends. We disappointed them.
And when President Carter left the White House, Judy was still there. Then the Today Show as chief Washington correspondent until PBS's McNeil Lehrer NewsHour lured her away with more airtime and no commercials. After 10 years of important stories, her own front line,
I'm Judy Woodruff in New Hampshire.
and wonderful colleagues, along came CNN to dangle visions of news around the clock and around the world before her, and with just a few commercials to give her rest in between. She teamed with Bernard Shaw to cover politics, elections, wars, and other major national events. As they say, that was the beginning of a beautiful relationship. During her 9 years at CNN, Judy has been prime anchor for special events, she's been a senior correspondent, and she's been showered with awards. Now she presides daily over Inside Politics, the first national program devoted exclusively to politics.
What we're all about is covering the news.
The Fox thing, I don't know if you watch that, it's like watching the Cartoon Network. I mean, I don't know if you've seen that. But that's nuts.
Well, you know, what we try to do...
You could say Fox is nuts if you want.
Along with her strong desire for a meaningful career, Judy has never lost sight of an off-air life. She co-founded the International Women's Media Foundation to assist female journalists worldwide and has served on boards of many professional organizations. She and husband Al have raised critical funds for the Spina Bifida Association with an annual roast. And always, what mattered most was family. She took a few days off to produce The Two Sons with some help from Al, barely making it from work to hospital for the first one.
Judy Woodruff, Mrs. Albert Hunt, with a sense of timing only a television reporter could have, appeared on this program last night reporting from the White House, and a few hours later went to a hospital and produced a bouncing baby boy.
Then receiving a beautiful little daughter from Korea.
I have never figured out how Judy balances everything. She's just one of a kind.
For her intelligence, her energy, her continuing devotion to responsible journalism, we honor Judy Woodruff. She has indeed proved herself a wonder in television land.
How are you? And now the Mother Teresa of American television journalism.
All I can say is this is really lame. I mean, there is a lot of dirt in my life. You guys did no digging. You found nothing other than to repeat some stories that have been out there. I mean, there is a lot of material. All right, what can I say about Wolf Blitzer, other than the fact that I love Wolf's hair, but not as much as I love the beard. Don't ever shave it, Wolf. You know, as has been pointed out, Wolf returned to Washington 3 days ago from the Middle East. I want you to know, Wolf, how much all of us at CNN appreciate the terrific job that you did there as advance man for Christian. Leslie Stahl, what's with the gun stories? You know, my good friend Leslie and I, we go back more than 20, as she said, covering the Carter White House and the Reagan White House together. She said, you know, and several people have pointed this out, Ronald Reagan used to confuse us, the two blondes, and you know, that was very flattering to me because I have been a fan of Leslie's for so long. I remember as a young girl in junior high school watching Leslie on CBS. And these days, as she said, she's the baby and she's the babe on 60 Minutes, where we figured it out the other day. The combined age of all 6 regulars is 3,422 in dog years. Okay. Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, just great. You know, we wanted to get the warm, witty, charming senator from Texas. Unfortunately, Phil Gramm was not available. The senator serves in the grand tradition of strong women politicians from Texas, Ann Richards and Ma Ferguson.
You know Ma, back in the 1930s, she had to deal with the first of many nasty disputes over bilingual education. Her solution was a simple one. She announced that there would be no more dirty French or Spanish taught in the schools. Quote, "If English was good enough for Jesus Christ, it's good enough for me." On the Democratic side, now we initially had hoped and planned on John Dingell. But when he couldn't do it, Nancy Pelosi eagerly volunteered. You know, she'll do almost anything for Chairman Dingell these days. After that little misunderstanding when Nancy made a campaign contribution to his primary opponent this year. Nancy, you know, I know John, and he's the type who will forgive and forget. But Debbie, never. And now to Mrs. Greenspan. I feel a lot better about the economy, knowing that the Fed is not going to raise interest rates. Andrea's free to shop. The only threat to consumer confidence I see is one of these mornings when Andrea is regaling us on the Don Imus show, and the I-Man, as he always does, asks her to put Crazy Al on the phone, and she does it. But the story I love best about her took place some years ago. Andrea was primarily reporting back then for the Today Show. She had a severe allergy attack one day, and she fainted dead away. An ambulance came. Andrea was being carried out of the NBC newsroom on a stretcher. Just then, a producer spoke up. "So who are we going to get to do the story for Nightly News?" At which point, Andrea lifted her head up from the stretcher and whispered, "Nightly? Nightly?" They brought her back into the... Mr. Moderator, as for you, Al was right. You're much better in person than on television. 10 of the happiest years of my life were working with you at the NewsHour. Thank God Jim was there to rein in the wild impulses of Robin McNeil. But I'm going to tell you, I'm here to defend Jim from those scurrilous, unfair criticisms recently that the NewsHour seems like it's 8 hours long. That's at least 3 or 4 hours off. And my husband, Albert, after watching you tonight, I must admit, dear, I had second thoughts about that monumental decision we made 22 years ago to let you keep your maiden name. You know, Al is a prodigious reader, and he often gives me clips. He drops them on my desk that he thinks I could pick up on. Just yesterday, he left me a copy of the latest Town and Country magazine, open to the Sally Quinn piece titled, "My Husband, My Hero." This is true, Ben. Two of Al's Capital Gang colleagues are here tonight, the female members of the gang, Margaret Carlson and Kate O'Byrne, right here. Without their civilizing influence, the gang would make the new Crossfire look like the NewsHour. Ouch. I am also flattered that so many people from CNN are here tonight. Easily the most impressive gathering of cable news intellectual firepower since Larry King dined alone. A number of the really, really important people are here tonight. From Atlanta, Jim Walton, Sue Bundy, you heard from Sue a little bit earlier. Sid Bedingfield did call me this morning to say that he was just back from the Middle East, but his son was having a baseball game tonight, and I told him, absolutely, that comes first. Don't come to Washington. But from here in Washington, our new bureau chief, Catherine Cross, our new deputy bureau chief, Steve Reddish, Tom Hannon, our political director, Shirley Hung, who produces Inside Politics every day, and so many others. The one question, though, I will say this for the executives, is why does Walter keep leaving on my desk all those recent photos of Greta? When I read that the American Newswomen's Club, which was founded in 1932, was limited to women journalists, I wondered, how do they find a quorum at that first meeting? but we've come a long way, baby, and this club has been a constant source of encouragement and prodding. With the Leslie Stalls and the Andrea Mitchells and my wonderful CNN colleagues from Candy Crowley to Christiane Amanpour, Paula Zahn, and Connie Chung, and here tonight, Kate Snow, Kelly Arena, and we've achieved incredible, I think, levels on the air women have, unthinkable when I first came to Washington. You know, we used to point out that the politicians should do so well. In the Clinton, the first Bush, the Reagan, and the Carter administrations, when they got together for a big White House decision, it was an all-white boys group, usually. That's obviously changed with this Bush administration. Karen Hughes, Condi Rice are in the room when the big decisions are made, and with Karen's announcement today that she's going to be leaving at the end of the summer, we don't know if there's any man who's got enough clout to take her place. But won't it be nice when we can all say the same thing about all the television networks and the newspapers? And just another word about Helen Thomas. She has been my idol as a reporter ever since I set foot in the White House press room, and I saw this woman working harder than anybody else, asking tougher questions than anybody else. She's fearless, and I soon learned getting there earlier in the morning than anyone else. She's an inspiration to all of us. I know that Andrea and Leslie know this, and I'm incredibly honored to be presented anything with your name on it, Helen, so thank you. It's past Jim Lehrer's bedtime, so I'm going to be very quick. I just want to say a brief personal word about these fellow participants up here in the dais. No one is more supportive of his colleagues at CNN than Wolf. After I appeared on The Daily Show, which somebody mentioned, Wolf was the first to say what a great job I did. Truthful, he's not always, but supportive, yes. Kay Bailey Hutchison has over the past 8 months become a mother not once but twice, adopting Bailey and Houston, and I think when Time Magazine next ventures into career and family, the centerpiece should be the soon-to-be senior senator from the state of Texas. And Nancy, whether we are Republican or Democrat, politician or journalist, it's wonderful to see for the first time ever a top congressional leadership meeting with a skirt at the head of the table. You make all women watching you proud. After our son was injured several years ago, you saw Jeffrey a few moments ago, I spent more than a month living in a hospital with him. The first time I ventured out after that was to do a Vanity Fair publicity shoot with Leslie. She helped to persuade me to do it. You know, Leslie and I don't see each other as much anymore, but every time we have had a problem, she's been there. And I will never forget, Leslie, your words of encouragement and comfort that August day 4 years ago. I'll always remember. Andrea is our daughter Lauren's godmother. Every child should have a Jewish godmother. She really is a surrogate mother to all of our children more times than I care to relate. They tell me how much better it would be if we had deleted the word surrogate. No one has been there more for Al and me and the 3 children than Alan and Andrea, and we love you both. I've been blessed with 3 decades of journalism to work with some really great people. I've had fabulous mentors and bosses, especially including at my 8 years at CNN. No one has meant more to me or served as more of a guide and a compass about journalistic integrity, fairness, and a genuine commitment to quality than Jim Lehrer. He's a hero to so many who care and worry about our business. And finally, my husband, you gave me the greatest gifts of all. We just saw them, Jeffrey, Benjamin, and Lauren. I love you. I got off much too easy tonight. But it has been fun, thanks to all of you, especially to Betty Dukert and all of your wonderful colleagues at the American News Women's Club. And thank you all very much for coming. Thank you.